I was in a self-driving car the other day and it couldn't figure out how to get through a roundabout.
I want to thank you, Jonathan, for coming back again.
Thank you.
You're busy. And you know what? Every time you come back, if you're on visit, no, if you come back more than twice a year, but usually once a year, because last time we had you on, it was
summer of 2023.
2023.
Yeah.
It was in June.
Yeah.
June. And you were number 260. I think you're going to be 360 now.
Okay,
I've done 100 from that time to this time.
That's incredible. You're a busy man.
Oh, man, what can I say? What can I say? So at that time, you had predicted all the things you're working on. You have several. You had a couple of projects. You have your own company.
Yes.
You're doing a lot with AI.
Yes.
I've been doing a lot with AI.
It's fascinating technology.
Talking before we turned on the cameras, we started talking a little bit about what you want to do.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get into what you're doing.
Happy to. I love hearing myself talk. So no, it's been a good year. So the consulting firm, Bethune Consulting LLC, we do software solution delivery, we develop applications, we do cloud technology, all kinds of stuff. That has gone really well. We've got some great new clients, a lot of different fields, healthcare, insurance, really good projects. But on the AI front, from what I said last year, if I recall, I talked about kind of wanting to have a seat at the table, wanting to be a part of that big conversation and transition, because we saw with ChatGPT how it was affecting so many industries. What we have done over the last year is we've launched a new AI startup called JAKMET, which I just posted about actually on LinkedIn about a week ago, that we're officially in open beta. And the quick pitch for what JAKMET is it's kind of like Wix or Squarespace for generative AI apps. So Wix and Squarespace are solutions for building websites. And it used to be that to build a website, you had to know a lot of HTTP and HTML and SSL and all these other acronyms. It's like the military. It was a very painful thing. You'd have to hire a tech team to build it. And then you have these web builder programs through Wix and Squarespace that let you non-technical people, with a few clicks, create their own website. We have done the same thing with LLMs and generative AI apps. We have a service now that allows anyone to create their own AI app and train it and deploy it, publish it however they want. And this is really important because I think one of the most important things with AI technology is democratization, making sure that everyone has access, that we don't have a future of haves and have-nots, where there's a massive imbalance and lack of ability to benefit from the technology. I think that's where you're going to create a lot of the more difficult and intractable political and social problems if we don't have the structure to spread access.
What I was going to say is that I think that we're going to have to make the AIs train people, because right now we still have a big gap between people who understand what the internet is.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And people that use it. Because I found out just through a book that I just went through, I told you it's called User Friendly.
Right.
We're actually in Africa and in India.
Yes.
In Africa, in some of the countries there, the people would actually take the phone and they would use Facebook the way we use Google.
Okay, as like a search.
They would ask questions to their friends on Facebook. That's all they knew. They didn't understand how they could get on the internet.
Yeah, but it's something.
Right. And then there's another thing, and in India they had a similar problem where they didn't understand the concept of what's the internet. Sure. They'd been told they were on there and that they could post pictures, but they didn't understand how it really would help them in their lives.
Sure. I can understand that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have to create some AIs that help more people
learn to help
easier.
Bridge the gap. There's still, even not counting AI, there's still a massive digital divide, especially between the third world and the first world. And I think that's some of the social and political concern, is that it's going to widen this gap. AI, it's going to create this elite class of 1% and everyone below that. And so I'm a big believer that, as I talked about last time, the third way, we need a way to continue to cultivate this technology, but have structures in place that allow for greater accountability and access. And I'm a big believer in the public utility model. Similar to what we have now with the internet, we have ISPs, we have internet service providers, and they're regulated. They have to meet certain requirements of transparency and performance and costs. They have to follow state laws. I think we need to do a similar approach to AI. And in fact, my firm, we trademarked the term AISP, Artificial Intelligence Service Provider, and we patented our technology with the goal of creating a similar structure of having AI service providers where everyone has access, but it's regulated through public agencies or through private agencies, whatever the combination makes sense depending on the municipality.
Now how are we going to deal with the other countries?
So that's the thing. I don't have the one-size-fits-all answer to that, but I think the ideal is similar to how you have ISPs. You have companies that provide access to the internet. You should have companies and organizations that provide access to AI that don't require a ton of training, a ton of technical ability. You pay, and the technology is there for you to use in a very user-friendly way.
They said the one thing that's happening because of AI takes up so much power and energy.
True. Yes.
That I believe it's either Amazon or Google has built is going to build one of their sites next to a nuclear plant.
Doesn't surprise me.
And they're starting to develop these smaller nuclear plants. That are a little bit more, that are easier to develop, but still provide you with the type of power you're going to need to run this AI.
I mean,
it's extremely power hungry.
To me, this is another reason why we need a rational regulatory model, because it isn't just the technology and its consequences on different industries, it's also all of the externalities, all of the other costs that come with it. The fact that it does eat up a ton of energy, it uses a lot of water and a lot of resources, and we can't just allow private entities to just gobble that up for their own profit without having some kind of structure in place to make sure things are transparent and regulated and access is provided to all kinds of people. So similar to any new technology, when electricity and was created, or spread with power plants or smartphones or just cell phone technologies, you always had some level of regulatory structure and barriers to entry and various things like that. It's going to be complicated to figure it out, but I do think at a high level we need similar structures for AI to provision access.
Well, isn't the whole idea about any of the technology that man develops is to make us have a more leisurely life, or so that we can. But that doesn't really work, because I think that cultures like, for example, I like to use Japan. Having lived here so long. Is that they seem to know over their 3,000 years that if you don't have people doing something, they will start to revolt.
Oh, of course, of course.
If you get a massive group of people that are sitting around doing nothing.
It's a powder keg.
You're going to start something. So what they do is they'll have 5 people in uniforms with flashlights around one little area they're working on. When they could easily have a robot there going like this with their hand. But they're still employing someone. They give them some fees. They feel like they have a purpose.
People need to have a purpose.
That's right.
Standard human interest. And I think it's funny you're talking about, technology providing leisure. If you look at like 19th century sci-fi, if you read old science fiction from the 1800s, about like the year 2000, what's the world going to be like? It's a world of the Jetsons, where people work 20 minutes per week or 1 or 2 days a week, and machines do all the work, and everyone's just kind of leisurely. And now the paradigm we have is we're in the cusp of, AI is going to take all their jobs, and we're terrified of it, right? The idea of technology creating leisure doesn't seem to follow with the culture we've created, a culture of competition and constant, one-upsmanship. We don't really want leisure, we want difference and variance and to compete, to be better than each other. And I think that's a social and sort of cultural problem, but it is an interesting point that we do need to make sure people have stuff to do, that they have the ability to create meaning.
I think having an app or having AI work on those tasks, how do you keep people involved in a society that is so bent on competition, built on one-upmanship, the haves, the have-nots? How do we change that so that more people have access to it and people don't feel in lack? They say the internet, not the internet, but Facebook produces, by its very nature, creates FOMO.
Oh, of course.
Fear of
missing out.
Fear of missing out, right?
The social media has done that.
So how do we make it so that people don't have that fear and they want to be more engaged, or like yourself and like I feel myself, but I force myself not to be, be an introverts?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's an intractable cultural problem. I think the last time I was on here, I was wearing a rosary. I actually forgot it this time.
That's right, you had it around your hand.
You
sure did. I was going to say, is he going to bring it this time?
No, I forgot about it. I actually, because I only landed a few days ago. But I still go to Mass every week, and I still am a big believer in the importance of spiritual reflection. And I think that one of the values of religion is helping to create context and meaning for people. And I think that is the root problem, is that whatever technology we create, it has to serve some kind of enduring human interest. And there's no quick, easy answer to that. And so, in light of lacking any kind of larger purpose or spiritual design, people are just going to compete. It's just going to be materialism. And social media has made that a lot worse. I've met, so I do a lot of watch collecting. I'm a big fan of watches. And I've met people who,
today.
oh, that's okay, that's okay. But I've met people online, people in their 20s who feel stressed that they can't get a Rolex and they can't get a Lamborghini, and I'm saying, chill out, you're young, you don't have to be competing for this stuff. The reason is they see it on social media, they see it on Instagram, and they feel like they're behind, and I think that's really sad. It makes me glad that I grew up when I did and didn't have that concern.
I think I have a slight solution to all of that.
Yeah.
And I use that at the end of my podcast.
Yeah.
I always say, never forget, it's all on loan. So reach for the stars, because you're too blessed to be stressed. The reason why I say that is because you don't own anything.
No, we don't.
But we want to think we do. And they think having that watch or having that Lamborghini or having that big home is going to make them something. And I say that it doesn't. No. You make it something.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's a hedonic treadmill if you just constantly looking for things.
It's what you put in. If you're in a tailored suit, but yet you don't feel good about who you are inside, your suit's not going to vibrate the way you want it to.
No, it's not. It's not. It has to be a reflection of the person.
It's inside out.
The watch is not the achievement. It's the things that let you get to it. And I've tried to instruct some of the people in the communities about that, but there's still a lot of that material.
It's hard.
It's
that's
hard.
all you see. When you have sound bites, you have a 2-minute video, someone jumping around doing this and bling, 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 and you go, oh.
Yeah.
But guess what? That watch stops sometimes.
Yeah.
Guess what? It can drop and break. The face can break. Now, can you afford to maintain it?
There's that too.
That's another thing too. You got that big mansion.
Yeah.
Who's cleaning up around it? You think dust settles all the time? Just sit in your little room. And see how quick it gets dirty if you don't do anything.
It creates a lot of problems if you don't plan ahead.
You don't know.
No, I'm with you there, and I like what you said, that it's all on loan.
It is.
Patek Philippe, their slogan, which I used to always hate, was that you never really own a Patek Philippe, you just keep it for the next generation.
But
in a sense, it's true. Yeah,
that's a fact.
Absolutely.
And if you think that way, that leads to you having more than one. And you say, especially if you have the privilege of being able to give it away.
Yeah,
because if you don't, someone will.
Someone will. You can't take it with you. You can't take it with you.
So it's nice if you can think that far ahead and you say, okay, now I have these many grandchildren, or I like that guy a lot. Here, you just see him, and he doesn't even have to know. Leave it to some place where he finds it. He thinks he found it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so many things like that.
And the thing that I've come back to that I actually do like about the slogan is it speaks to an important principle, which is that it's important to be able to think long term and think generationally in terms of building something and wealth and values. That a lot of the problems of modern society, I think, are people are very individualistic and only care about their individual lifespan. There's a saying, I think it's Italian or something, I forget where it's from, but that you can gauge the quality of a culture by seeing the old men who will plant trees that they'll never live to see grow. Right? That they'll plant the trees and they know that they're going to die before it grows up, but they care about people they'll never meet or never even see. That ability to think long term, you see it in certain cultures. You see it among Islamic cultures, you see it in Chinese and Eastern cultures. That is a powerful advantage, and it's something that in the West we've lost sight of. And I think it's part of the answer to some of these questions around technology and AI is cultivating that value system again.
You're right. It's so true. It depends on what kind of culture you grew up in and what you were taught, because that's what religions try to do.
Yes.
And each of them have, I believe they have a sense or a thread of truth in all of them. However, the very idea of saying religion, as soon as you say that, you leave somebody out. Because if they don't believe what you believe.
I think it's important.
But yet they're here.
We have to have an ecumenical sense. We have to try to think beyond just our own dogma.
And what happens if we have empirical knowledge about there being beings here that aren't like us.
Sure. I've seen it.
Let's say they've been here. Let's say it's inner Earth, and they don't come from outer Earth, and they've been basically watching their experiment.
Okay,
what happens then?
So this could go to a whole other direction, this conversation. We could get into the interdimensional stuff, the demon stuff. No, I've looked into a lot of it. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Absolutely. I'll say just this much, that I've become a lot more humble about the nature of the world, that I think there is more than we can see. But I think at least talking about religion and spirituality, I have my own faith, I go to Mass, I have my prayers, but when it comes to interacting with other people, I try to operate from a place of respect and trying to find common ground. So I have plenty of friends who are Muslim or Jewish or other denominations, and we have a certain thread in common, which is being able to think beyond just the self, about our family, about our community, our culture, our descendants. I think that's something we can share.
That's right. That's right. It's when someone decides to push it, they give you too much of what they believe, and won't accept a thing you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to be a missionary, you have to do it by example, not by filibuster. You have to show people through your works.
That's right. Don't get on your bully pulpit and start telling someone this is the way it has to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I say so.
Absolutely.
I say I heard it first.
Yeah.
And this is how it goes.
Yeah. I would agree with you there. But this fascinating.
It's so interesting.
Topic.
But when I grew up, I grew up at a time when it was ludicrous to think, first of all, that there was anyone else other than us.
Sure.
We were just getting out of the stage where we realized that we rotated around the sun and it wasn't the other way around.
Sure.
And we'd never get to the moon. It was it's something you don't think about.
Yeah.
It wasn't a feat you thought about. So I remember those times.
So every major religion has its division and its
Judaism
debate.
does too.
Oh,
yes.
certainly, absolutely. I mean, that's a whole other can of worms if we go into what's happening in the Middle East. But they have their conflicts, and I think
I had the Israeli ambassador on.
Oh wow, you did. Okay, I need to see that. I got to see that.
And he was. I think you were very pleased because we didn't get into any politics whatsoever, which I don't usually.
Sure. Yeah. No, I try to avoid that. I mean, I forget who said it.
And then how do you know? I mean, how do we know? It's just an opinion. Everyone has an opinion. They say opinions are like bottom holes.
Exactly.
Everybody has one.
Right, and you got to find someone who cares about yours. Absolutely.
That's right.
So, yes.
And it should be you first.
Absolutely. No, I'm with you there. I've made that joke many times. Yeah, I agree, and I try to just again come from a place of respect.
That's true.
I'm from an older generation that doesn't get triggered or offended when someone disagrees.
Well, you grew up in an environment where if you'd been triggered, you could not be here. You would have had a stroke a long time ago.
Oh, of course.
Because I mean, you could walk out the door and say, "Wait, I'm the only one here." You know, being triggered.
Yeah, no, I've interacted with a lot of people who have violently different opinions than me, and I've learned that again, it's similar to what I was saying about missionary work. It's if you really want to, challenge racism, for example, you have to spend time with racists. You have to spend time with the people who believe this stuff and understand where they're coming from. You can't always just shout people down. So I'm a big believer in dialogue and not just, oh, I'm offended, you have to be canceled.
Did you see that documentary about the guy that goes around KKK members and he got one dragon head of it to give him his robe. They became such good friends.
That's how it works.
There's a black guy that went into all these places and he'd sit down and talk with them, and after a while they'd think about it and say, I like you.
Exactly. You got to humanize people.
It's just wow, and he prides himself, and they even let him have his robe.
That's the hard part, and it's something it's one of the things I like about Christianity is it encourages you to humanize people, because that's where most persecution starts from, is dehumanization. It's saying, oh, these people, they're not really people.
Right.
And you see that, of course, from hate groups like the KKK. But the flip side of that is that even you, as a minority, have to humanize them. Have to say, oh, they're just trash. They're not even people. No, they are people. If I can sit and listen with them, we can come together. We can find a way to realize the common humanity. It's hard. It takes a lot of effort. But
now tell me, is AI going to take us over?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I think
where are we going to be 10 years from now?
10 years from now, I don't think it's going to be 10 years from now Skynet, Terminator type of situation. Okay. But what I'm more practically worried about is the economic consequences of a huge imbalance of usage. There are whole industries that are threatened, particularly creative fields. I wrote about this on my blog about AI music and AI design and logos. A lot of my friends who are in the design and creative fields are feeling the pinch there. So I'm more practically concerned about sort of economic downturns, and which could lead to social and political conflict as well. I think the sort of Terminator 2 scenario, I was in a self-driving car the other day and it couldn't figure out how to get through a roundabout.
Here in Japan?
No, this was in Dallas, actually.
Okay.
And I was, I had the thought about how bad self-driving cars still are and how bad the AI is on the phone when I'm calling my insurance company. I think we're a ways out from them taking over everything, all the AIs. They're not even able to collude. They can't even understand a picture, So those sort of dystopian scenarios I'm less concerned about. But more practically, the effects of LLMs, generative AI, and other machine learning technologies severely damaging sectors of the economy, leading to political unrest. I think that's a more practical, immediate concern for the next 10 or 20 years.
Wow. So how can we use it ourselves? How do you picture an average person using AI? Because a lot of people won't touch it any more than they did the facts when they first came out, because they couldn't understand the idea of paper coming out of a machine,
yeah,
and someone's written me from back there. How's that
yeah.
paper get from there to
yeah,
here?
it's black magic. Yeah, no, it's something evil about that. Yeah, I still think so. But
and people don't use AI, and also when
Yeah.
you have people in education saying you're cheating.
Yes.
If you use it, and my thought about that is, wait just a minute.
Yeah.
So I'm cheating if I pick up an iPhone instead of trying to scream across the country, and I call someone. Is that cheating too?
Yeah, you got to drive over there and talk to them.
So that's cheating because I didn't see them in person, or I can see them here and I can't see them actually from the other side, the other side of the world.
Sure.
I think it's a tool to be used, and the better you get with it, the better you should do things with it. And it can only be as good as you are.
I'm inclined to agree. I think where there's...
Be as good as you are, yeah.
That's true. I think the concern, though, is where the difference there is that the phone is a tool just for convenience, to make it so I don't have to drive over there to talk to you. What AI does is it's not just about convenience, saving time. It actually has the ability to replace the entire creative process. So, for example, in academia, someone going to ChatGPT, giving it a prompt and saying, hey, generate for me a 12-page essay about the Renaissance, have such and such sources, have such and such. You can literally do that.
I understand, but it still has glitches, and if you're not, if you're not literate enough, you don't even know if the information is correct, and it tells you that.
Absolutely. And it's gotten to the point where they have to run papers through detection software to look for it, and then there's counter software, and it's this sort of tete-a-tete back and forth. And so that, I think, is a real concern, is where AI is replacing not just human work, but human judgment, humans' decision-making. And so I think there is a need for some degree of transparency or regulation, at least in certain industries. We don't want AIs controlling all of our defense or all of our education judgments about our health and our future. We want to make sure those are made by humans. But I agree. I think there's a lot of unnecessary fear about it. I think the key thing that's going to be the real shift in sentiment, similar with the internet, is when the technology is more accessible, when just mom and pop shops and average everyday people can use it. Similar to what social media did for the internet in the early 2000s, made it so everyone can create a Facebook page or a MySpace page or Twitter and quickly spin up their own sites. It democratized the technology, and now people aren't really scared of it. Everyone has broadband internet.
Do you have any ideas? Any ideas that people can use now to start to get more involved with AI?
Yeah, again,
ChatGPT.
That's entirely the point of what we built.
Or do you charge people when you tell them this information?
Yeah, well,
you don't want to tell them something that you can get paid.
No. I hear what you mean. The Joker said, "If you're good at something, never do it for free."
Right.
No, with consulting, AI has been a boon for us. Obviously, we've done a lot of work helping firms to just do discovery and say, hey, we're a big company, what can AI do for us? Okay, let's do an audit, let's take a look, we'll dig around and we'll leave you with something that you can sustain and saves you time and money, demonstrably. What we're trying to do with JAKMET is go from B2B to B2C, to take something to non-technical, mom and pops, individual researchers, people experimenting, playing around. It's the same thing with the internet. It has to get to a point where it's not just developers and tech nerds and people with a lot of free time, but anyone can just, in a couple of clicks, gain some value from it. And that's the whole idea of what we've built with JAKMET.
That's interesting, because I sit back and I think constantly, how do I use it? And I find that one of the biggest things that happens, it's almost like a copy machine.
Sure.
Or the computer. All of us thought that was going to eliminate paper. Actually created more.
It did, yeah.
Because you could be more productive and create more content, and that content you still wanted to have the tactile feel of it.
Yeah, of
so you'd print it, and we have even more around our place than we had before because we couldn't produce it as quick.
Yes.
Right. So I'm thinking with this AI, the amount of options you have, because it has ChatGPT has now, people don't realize it, but a lot of apps that you can attach to it.
Yes, of course, yes.
And by doing so, it gives it even more power in whatever area you want to go into.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But it's so many.
Yeah.
It's like going to someone and you want to have your announcement printed. And then the guy comes out and says, okay, well, you have only 100,000 prints to pick from.
Yes. Signals the noise problem there.
A smart person will come out and say, here, you can pick from these 10.
Right, yeah, to avoid decision paralysis, yeah.
Exactly. But that's what we have right now. We have decision paralysis with ChatGPT. And that's why a lot of people don't want to touch it.
Well, it's even worse than that. I mean, there's a lot of noise that's generated, and one of the problems that LLMs have now, if you try to train a new large language model, and usually they're trained on internet text, on Wikipedia and thousands of websites, terabytes of that. The problem you have now is that you have an increasingly large amount of internet text is generated by ChatGPT, is generated by other LLMs. So you have AIs ingesting stuff from other AIs, and it's just this constant issue. So this actually bit Elon Musk in the butt. He got in trouble with this because their AI with X or Twitter,
right.
They found that sometimes in its output it would say things like, oh, this output violates OpenAI's terms of service. And it's like, wait a minute, this isn't OpenAI, this is Elon Musk's thing. And it's because it had ingested so much text from ChatGPT. So if you try to create a new large language model today, how do you get authentic human-generated text? Oh, that's right. The Ouroboros, the never-ending story, the snake eating its own tail problem.
I see what you're saying.
So this is an issue that's going to be a problem. It's not just that there's so much noise. We have a challenge of creating context of curation.
Exactly, because we won't be able to, because after a while, because it's so much faster than us, it's producing stuff so that
same problem with internet spam. Like the vast majority of email generated today is by spam, automatic bots, right? 90% or something like that.
Right.
Soon, 90% of internet conversations and social media posts and LinkedIn, all that, 90% of it's just going to be ChatGPT agents talking to each other. And the humans are going to be in the back sipping Mai Tais, I guess. I don't know if that's a good thing.
If they're linked into it.
If they're connected to it, sure.
If they have a CRM and they're connected to it,
I know
then
a bunch of people who use ChatGPT to create their marketing posts, to respond to stuff.
Exactly.
They train it on their own emails, and it has their voice. It sounds like them.
Exactly.
So we're all gonna. I think it's kind of like sort of a. We're gonna all have our own tulpas. This is like a Twin Peaks reference. Well, we're all gonna have our own like AI other self that we can. Yeah, right.
That's what I have right now. I have one right now that can speak 27 different languages.
That's awesome.
So I'll show it to you, and it looks so real.
Yes.
Because what I can do is actually sit down here.
Yeah.
Start it off.
Yeah.
And then when I finish, you'll see me speaking.
That's so cool. That's so cool. That's very cool.
Now it has its limitations, and the thing is, unless you're doing it, you wouldn't know. But I can look and tell because I've done it enough.
Yeah.
That's not him. That's not Jonathan.
You can figure that out.
That's his avatar.
Sure.
And that's what happens to everyone if they do it enough. But most people don't. So you have an opportunity now. To have your out there, but I think it's best.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that the internet doesn't provide for any of us, that's trust.
Sure.
You still have to be with that person. You still have to get a sense of who that is.
Absolutely. There has to be a human connection.
And I think sometimes our video chats can help a little bit, but still you want to sit down with them.
Sure.
You want to go out golfing with them. You want to sit down and have breakfast.
Yeah.
Something, and you see how we vibrate.
Absolutely.
Then you say, oh, this guy's pretty good. Because, like you said, we can write anything now.
Yeah, I mean,
Chad, you can make yourself look as good as you want to.
Instagram filters, sure.
You sure can.
No, there's a lot of different ways this could go. I mean, there's the dystopia version of all of these tulpas, all of these avatars that we create, eventually colluding into some sort of egregore and having their own society and replacing the original people. That's my own sci-fi short story that I'm going to write.
They become sentient.
Sure, something terrible like that. I mean, there's a lot of really cool sort of spiritual demon type things you could write about that. But then there's the other better scenario that I hope to build toward, which is if we have the ability to automate away a lot of this conversations and trust and marketing speak, stuff that's kind of boring and people don't want to do anyway. Ideally, the ideal outcome is it creates more time for us to interact in the real world.
That's what we talked about.
If so much of the digital world can just be automated away to AI agents, then that means humans can get back to spending more time in the real world with each other, going golfing, going to movies, going for walks, instead of sitting in front of a screen. If we can have that reduce the amount of time that we need to look at our phone, because our AIs are smart and they understand us and they can do things for us, I think that's good.
Yeah, but I have to think, what is that they're doing for us that we're spending the time with this person, we're doing it for someone else? I just have to think about what that is.
I mean, that's my dream, maybe again because of the generation I'm from. I would like to see us go to a paradigm of less screen time and more human time. That would be, if technology can do that for us, it's a big win, I think.
That's true. I think we found that anyway, we found that out through the internet era. Particularly when they started having these apps and people's screen time, because I think...
Yeah, I worry about it, iPad kids and all that.
There's one guy that said, and that was in User Friendly, the book that I was reading, that he said he remembers, he was a part of the Apple phenomenon, the touch phone.
Sure.
And he remembered Christmas was a time when all of his family would get together. They'd come together in one place, and they'd meet him at the front door, and he remembered coming home right after feeling good about what he did with Apple. And he knocked on the door, and nobody answered. And he thought no one was there, and then finally, he opens up the door, he goes in, and everybody's on their iPhone.
Yep.
And he said, what have I done?
Created Frankenstein's monster,
They were all on the phone. And I thought about that because I was one of the first adapters here, and I used to pride myself in that.
Yeah.
In Japan, because I used to travel a lot through my medical equipment business.
Yeah.
And I'd go to China, or Hong Kong at the time, and I went to China as well. Yeah. And I saw everybody on their phones, on their cell phones. And they had the flip phones. They didn't have, you didn't have any visuals, so everybody was on their phone.
Yeah, sure.
And that was still new here. Very few people.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I remember someone questioning me saying they thought that I was trying to show off or whatever because I had a flip phone and no one else did.
Sure, 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 sure.
And I said, you obviously haven't traveled throughout Asia because I would say within the next 10 years, Japan is going to be flooded with it, but they take a long time before they adapt any new technology that's going to affect people to the extent that this will.
Absolutely, yeah.
They're very careful about that.
No, they're
very careful because they want to make sure that people have something. So they've done a great job. If you want to talk about the future, come to Tokyo.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
You find out how it can run.
Yeah.
But you have to discipline your people to feel good about working together.
Yeah.
They have that one thing set up from elementary school to the 6th grade. They know exactly.
It's a massive advantage.
It's wade.
Yeah, the cohesiveness. It's one of the things that always gets me when I come back.
But we don't teach that. We don't teach that. And most countries don't teach it in the way the Japanese have.
It's one of the things that inspires me to come back here in the summers. I'd be open to living here again at some point. It's just a very efficiently run city and culture, and I've learned a lot from it. I've come kind of full circle from being a foreigner and trying to kind of assimilate to now kind of having this expat identity that I really appreciate. That's a little bit less pretentious. But I think that when it comes to technological adoption, there's a lot we can learn. And on that question, I worry about it. I think the smartphone has been a blessing and a curse. I think it's been great to anytime I want. I can answer any question. I can learn languages. I can do all kinds of good things. But I worry about the effect on our mental processing and our attention spans. I've met a lot of young people, they can't sit through a movie anymore. They don't read books. They don't have the ability to kind of wrestle with a complex thread and idea over a long extended period of time. And so maybe it's just a pipe dream, but if AI can automate away a lot of the busy internet screen work we do and let us have more time to do these more human things. To interact and to read books.
That's a good thing. It's interesting to bring back, it's like bringing back the old times, what we had before, and people realized how enjoyable that is. And they're coming back and saying, guess what? I was with my buddy and we spoke for 2 hours without any electronics.
That's the way.
And someone's going to go, what? That's what we used to. I see myself telling people, shoot, that's all we did. As a matter of fact, we used to play board games. Board games, man, I'm trying to get one.
Yeah, I love board games.
I love board games. But that's what we did. I was talking to the little kids the other day, and I like working with children because they have no facades.
Sure.
They're very candid about their feelings. And I'm learning through them what their parents are learning. Yeah. Because they can only give that, but then they still have an innocence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I asked them, you remember the game Jacks?
Yeah, I remember Jacks.
You had the ball.
I knew Jacks. You pick up the stuff, yeah.
These kids didn't know.
No, they're not.
One kid did. Only one did.
Okay.
But I was surprised, and that was about, I think I had about 9 or 10 kids there, and only one little girl did.
Yeah, I mean, times there are changing,
that's right.
Bob Dylan would say. But I think the larger concern is that for us to function optimally as humans, we have to have a certain degree of patience and future orientation and delayed gratification. And smartphones and the algorithms that power a lot of the apps that they use work entirely against that. It reminds me of the marshmallow test, which I'm sure you've heard of. They put the little kid in the room, they put a marshmallow on the table. If you eat it now, well, if you wait until the teacher comes back, you get 2. And they study that, and they say that the kids who are able to wait and get the 2 marshmallows
do the best later.
Yeah, do much better later on in life. And that requires the ability to project yourself into the future, to delay gratification. And smartphone apps, work really strongly against that. So that's why in my own household, myself, and with my own family, I try to make sure that we spend some time doing things slowly. We all play instruments, we all play music, we watch movies every week.
Are you playing your sax again?
I play sax, I play clarinet, and I play piano. Yeah, we love the music, but we also have other hobbies.
There's something else. I saw this analogy used. I heard this analogy being used where, for example, if you have a fireplace and you have the poker, it's a long thing that has kind of like a hook, and it's dull at the end, so it's not really that hot. You can use that for the wood, or you can use that to take something from underneath the couch, right?
Sure.
So we do that. But apps can only be used for the way they're made.
Of course, yes.
So
yes.
we've lost the ability to start
to improvise.
Improvising, and that takes creativity, and that takes a different thought pattern. So we're being funneled into this one area where only what we see is what we can do, and we don't expect anything else from it.
Sure.
But how can we apply AI to that app? Is that possible to get that app to do a little? Well, we're taking those apps and apply it to. That's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it in a lot of fields.
That's right. The app does all kinds of stuff in the background.
There's a lot of background functionality, and you see it in gaming now. They're using AI to generate text and to do procedural generation of new stages and new worlds and things. So it can create engagement. It can create fun experiences. I'm very forward-thinking about technology. I don't just by default hate every new thing, but it can be used well. The challenge is making sure that human values inform the decisions and the things that we put out, and it's not purely just about generating revenue for investors. And that's the hard part. I think that a lot of modern software apps, phone apps, they go against what I would call optimal human functioning. They make us just into these content consumers all the time. And I think humans need to not just consume, they have to produce. You have to spend some time, whether it's writing or music or building or coding or whatever it is, you have to also have that mode of creativity, of producing something and not just consumption. I want to keep the endless scroll, right? We need to have something that encourages us to do that and give back in that way.
And that's what we have to train our children to do. If we can do it with our children, then they'll train their children, and it'll continue to go on. That is so interesting. What about universal pay? That's something that's been tossed around.
UBI, that's so that's the theory around AI, that if it does displace a lot of the economy, that one of the solutions will be some kind of UBI, some kind of guaranteed income, especially for people who are displaced. And I think it's one of those things, in theory it could work, but the practical problem is how it's administered. Like any political system or law, it's not executed by platonic machines, it's executed by flawed humans who are going to be biased, or are going to have contrary motives and things. And so that's really the challenge with UBI, is actually the execution of it. I actually think that there are better, more practical ways of dealing with the economic sort of consequences of AI, of reduction in jobs. I think what we need to do actually is incentivize more family formation, incentivize people to take care of each other. We actually in the past had a society where more families could function on a single income. And if AI is producing all of this wealth, it seems to me a more practical solution is to try to allow for people to function on a single income. Not necessarily just men or women, but having taxes incentives that encourages people to support extended families, support children, support spouses, support brothers and sisters. If fewer people are working, then we incentivize people to care for each other. I think that's a simpler approach. But yeah, I think UBI could work, but I think a more surgical approach is just having a tax structure that encourages people to come together as families and support each other.
I think that also we should start teaching people how to parent, because no one teaches us how to do one of the most important things we'll ever do in our whole life, if we choose to, and that's to raise another person.
Sure.
And we tend to do what our parents did with us, minus the things we didn't like.
Sure.
That's what we tend to do.
Sure.
And we figure if it was good for me, it's going to be good for them. And it could have been completely wrong. Or well, if your parents believed in corporal punishment, then that's what you'll do with your kids.
Sure.
And society is pretty much against that. I mean, let's say modern society is saying that doesn't work.
Sure.
So I think we need to have schools for that, where we say, we have it for, look, most of us know more about our pets than we do about our children.
Yeah, I can understand.
If you get a German Shepherd, this is the personality of a German Shepherd, or whatever, whatever it may be, we know more about them, and we have books about that, but we won't read any of our books on parenting, which we have plenty.
Yeah, no, we do. There's a lot of science about it. I think it's a very difficult thing to regulate, especially in Western culture. Well, yeah, it's very personal. In America, there's that sort of "don't tread on me" mentality. Get the government out of my business, and I can respect that. I think we have to allow people to do what they think is right in accordance with their own values within reason. Obviously, we don't allow child abuse. We don't allow things that are going to endanger the public. But I think, there's more we could do in the education system to help prepare people, and not just prepare, but encourage, because we have a problem, as we talked before, about sort of materialism and kind of the loss of meaning, loss of identity in modern society. I think at the same time that you help prepare people for a family life and for being married and having children, you can encourage those things. You can say, this is something you can aspire to. Not everyone is meant to be zillionaires or Elon Musk or Andrew Tate or whatever modern idol, but people within their own domain, within the sphere of their own home, they can have a lot of freedom. They say a man's house is his castle. This is one of the things I really like about Chesterton. If you've ever read G.K. Chesterton, really great Catholic writer in the early 20th century, he made the point that in home, we have more freedom than outside of the home. In the home, we control everything. We control how it looks, we control what we eat, what we do, what we dress, our customs, our music, everything. When we go out into the public world, it's when we have to constrain ourselves. We have to dress a certain way, talk a certain way, look a certain way, do what our boss tells us, so on and so forth. He romanticized home life a lot. Certainly, it's not perfect. Some people had rough home lives. But if we prepare ourselves for it the right way and we build for it, it can be the most freeing and the best part of our world. So I think that's something we can do.
It's true, true. Being a grandfather now, I've been thinking that a lot of that's lost, at least in America, because I haven't lived there for a long time, so I don't really know. But I still know that most people don't, in our culture, that that didn't come from, let's say, an Eastern culture or an Eastern Bloc country where they embrace the elderly.
Yes.
So, like, for example, when you have hard times, you tend to do things you have to do. You can't afford to get a babysitter. You can't put your kids in daycare. So your mother will take care of your kids.
Right.
I think they should anyway, because they're calm. They're not out there trying to work with. They're not competing any longer.
Absolutely.
So they have a different mindset and they have more patience, which children need.
They need that. They need the grandparents.
But when you're the only one doing it and your child's trying to tie their shoe, but yet you have to be someplace in 15 minutes, guess who's going to tie the shoe? And the child really wants to learn to do it, and especially if they decide, I want to do it this time.
Right.
Now what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, they want to feel prioritized. Of course. I think in the Eastern cultures,
they do.
Yeah,
they do a good job of letting the grandparents take care of the kids.
Yeah, they should. I think actually involving extended families and having larger familial structures is an advantage. It's an adaptive advantage for any group. And I think that in Western countries, again, it's that individualism thing. I actually recently wrote a review of The Fountainhead, of an Ayn Rand book a while ago. And I made this point that when I was younger, I was a lot more attracted to her philosophy because it's very empowering and individualistic and you're heroic. But then living in Japan, I saw kind of the other side of it, that people really can enjoy their sort of unchosen collective identities, whether it's their family history, their lineage, their culture, their race, their religion, these things that are put onto them. They actually enjoy that. They revel in it. And it's like you meet a guy who's the 30th generation running some inn, and you might say to them, well, why aren't you some individualist, going to college and doing this? Well, no, I actually take pride in the fact that I'm continuing my family's tradition. That matters to me. You can't just tell the guy that he's wrong, right? And so that aspect of caring about your culture, the people who came before you, the people who came after, and that larger family structure, it's an advantage. It's an advantage. It can be a beautiful thing.
I think so. And then when you think about the Eastern religions, for example, in India, where they believe in reincarnation a lot of them, that's another reason why they continue to keep the same things going. I just got to finishing the book, Autobiography of a Yogi.
Yes.
And that is really, really good because he talks about that, and they do believe they've come back before and they can transcend this vessel that we call a body. And they go through the whole thing, so it gives you a different perspective on how you think about your life and what you're here for, and what you can obtain while you're here.
I agree. I think was it Mark Twain? I think he said history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Or I'm just full of references. That's half of my.
I like that.
Or True Detective. Time is a flat circle. I feel that way every time I come back to Japan. That I keep coming back to the same places and the same things.
You started coming here in 2006.
Was the first time.
2006, right.
But the thing is, I feel like I've come full circle. I feel like when I first came, I was a foreigner. Everything was weird and new. I was just marveling at everything. And I had a couple of stints here where I was trying to sort of climb a corporate ladder or assimilate. And I wasn't really sure what my identity was meant to be in this cultural context. And where I've landed is I know myself well enough to know that I'm not very good at LARPing as a Japanese person, as doing the role play, pretend, and no one's going to look at me and think that I'm Japanese. So I've come to a point of just be yourself, embrace who you are, and do what you're good at, and usually things will work out. And it has worked out.
Like you said, would you say you fail what?
You fail upward. I mean, that's just been dumb luck, I think, to be honest. But like I said the last time, I have been fired a lot. I've had clients get mad at me. I've had bad jobs go poorly. You know, and nothing is perfect for anyone. But I'm happy with where I've landed, and now I'm just an expat, just doing my thing.
Isn't that something? Well, I find that when you come back here,
yeah,
there's a reason for it, because it's so organized.
Yeah.
You like the way that it runs. And
sure.
It's not perfect, but what is?
No,
and if it were, listen,
Mm-hmm.
if you were a golfer and every time you hit the ball, you got a hole in one, would you want to golf?
Probably not.
See what I'm saying? You get tired of that real quick.
Yeah.
That's the world we live in.
Sure.
Babies don't get up and all of a sudden, I'm ready, and start walking.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You have
My
to go
son, when I had him on the bike, and I pushed them, and they looked back, Daddy, look, it hit the pole.
Exactly.
Guess what?
Yeah.
The next time they got up, they didn't look back and say, Daddy, look at me righty.
As I was saying before, you got to scuff your knees sometimes in life.
That's right.
I try to embrace that.
That's true.
Be good
but
with
why is it that our kids don't know, or at least my kids don't know what a scab is? It was because they pad everything nowadays.
Yeah, there may be a little bit of over-sheltering. That's true. I would agree with you.
Everything is padded. We don't want our kids to get hurt one single bit, but that's what life is about. And hurt is relative.
Yeah.
I used to give my sons a 10, which is the top score in gymnastics, when they fell down and really hit their head. And I said, I look at them and they're waiting to see my expression before they start crying, before they feel the pain.
Yeah, they got to wait.
And I go, fantastic, that's wonderful. And then they kind of
okay, great.
laugh and cry.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I've been there. Yeah, no, I'm there when
you got 2 boys, you have to.
Whenever I do my tax returns, I do that.
Oh, is that what you do? You laugh and cry?
Yeah, a little bit. No, I know what you mean. The pain can be edifying.
It can
right?
be.
Pain can be the best teacher.
It is.
And so, but we don't want to ever hurt our kids. We always want to try to
protect
protect them. So,
but then you're not doing them a favor necessarily either.
No, you're not.
So you want to control it. You want it to be within certain areas. You don't want them to get into a situation where they can't get out of it either.
Absolutely.
So you do want to do it in a really controlled area.
Yeah,
so
I'd agree with you there.
I think that's what we do to the best of our ability.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then we take them with us if we can. We try to say, okay, this was. I used to bring my son here to speeches I would give.
Yeah.
And I'd have him in the audience, and he'd watch and see it. And I'd ask him what he thought afterwards, and he said, "Yeah." I said, "Dad, you could be a little bit better." That
toughest critic.
That is what I expected.
Everyone's a critic. Okay. Who asked you?
So, yeah, right. I won't bring you to too many more of these.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So what really inspires you now? So you've come back. You said you've been back and forth since 2000. Since you first
2006 was the first time I came.
Yeah, you came in and taught some English.
After I graduated college and I taught for a bit. I was an English teacher. I taught at some private schools, but then pivoted into technology work around 2010. But what's kept me coming back is love the culture, love the opportunities.
One thing, your wife is Japanese too.
That helps certainly.
That helps too.
That helps certainly. Yeah. I mean, it's been a journey, but as I said, I feel like I've come full circle to a point where now there's less pretense of my identity and where I fit in.
Oh, because you had that a little bit.
I did.
You were thinking, okay, I'm going to be kind of like Japanese and sit back in the corner.
I worked for Toyota. I spent a year studying. I got the Japanese JLPT level 1. I got, I was planning to get residency and possibly citizenship. And I went through a long period of deliberately trying to assimilate. But what I ended up finding is that it didn't work for me in terms of my business priorities and my effectiveness. Who I am, I can only be myself well. I can't be this altered version well.
But people tend to, listen, they may not be able to articulate it, but that's what people want to deal with. Because I've said this before to people.
Yeah.
If a Japanese guy came in, let's say he's 5 foot.
Sure.
And he comes to the basketball court and says, man, I can beat all of you guys. And there's a bunch of black guys at the
it's going to be rough.
Even if he can really jump, I wouldn't believe him at the beginning because of how I've been conditioned to think.
Sure.
Or even if he came up and said, let me show you a song and I'm going to sing better than you can. I don't think so.
Yeah, I'd be skeptical.
But he might be able to.
Maybe. Yeah.
Right?
You got to give someone a chance.
But if he came to me and said, I'd believe him right away.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'd want to do business with him. I would never do business with the other guy, even if he could jump that high.
Absolutely.
I'd be too wrapped up in the fact that he's not in the norm.
Yeah.
He's not who I think he's supposed to be.
I mean, you got to.
So I've taught people. I know you can be outside of that.
You got to be who you are in this world.
That's right.
Well,
people appreciate that more.
Yeah, I think so. And
you'll get more done.
In my case, it's just I have better outcomes. I have better outcomes when I'm just true to myself. And I think in Japan, I've done better. I've had more successes by just being honest about who I am, my background, where I come from. Grew up in New York, Jamaican family. I have a certain affect. I have a certain personality, a certain vibe. And by leveraging that, I get more trust. I get more opportunities.
Because there's nothing outside of You don't vibrate differently. It doesn't come on and off. Now, how long did you try to assimilate to the Japanese society?
I'd say the first time I was here and I was teaching, there was a little bit of self-consciousness of that, of trying to make sure you bow the right way and you take off your shoes and you do all that stuff. And then the second stint when I was working for Toyota, there was a lot of corporate culture that I tried to adopt around how you talk with superiors and around how you interact with your colleagues and this and that. And what I found is that it didn't really get me anywhere.
It abused you.
Yeah, well, I wasn't treated great. The work culture is probably the biggest thing I would criticize about Japan.
Because they say, work culture, I don't care how much you are not Japanese.
No, it's not even just the sort of racial difference.
No, it doesn't. No. Your last name, your culture. Look, last name.
Yeah, exactly. But
they deal with that too.
But the problem is the work culture. They have an intense belief in seniority.
Yes.
Toyota specifically is a place where you work there 20 years, they still think you're a rookie. Right? It doesn't matter what your title is or what your pay grade is. If you're not a certain age, then you're kind of just ignored.
Right.
And this is a contradiction of, I can't really assimilate into the culture unless I respect that, but I don't respect that, right? It doesn't make sense to me. I'm coming from the startup world. I'm coming from Silicon Valley and New York City, where you have 20-year-olds making billions.
That's right.
Changing the world, right? It doesn't jive with what I saw in a place like Toyota, where there was
there's another place where you can do it.
Well, where there was such a desire to innovate, but yet not a desire to actually change or experiment or try anything new. And so I had to reflect a lot about that, and not just that, but other work experience. I worked at a few different firms in Japan. And I said, you know what, I have to decide, do I want to do this kind of role-playing thing, or do I want to just be myself and be successful? And it turns out that the latter made more sense.
Right. Well, you look a lot better. I mean, but you didn't. Well, the first time you came in here, because when I saw you with Toyota, you were very introverted, but yet easy to spot.
Well, running, the hair maybe, but running a business.
Because I came here. There's not many of us here in this club.
No, of course not.
I came up, and that's why I came up to you, and I said, "How are you doing?" And you were sitting down there, and that's when you were working with Toyota.
Well, so here's the thing. One of the things that's helped is that running a business has forced me to come out of my shell. Has forced me to be more extroverted and experiment and take chances. You have to learn how to always be closing, always be pitching. And I've gotten better at that part of things.
Right. Well, I think one thing too, you looked in the mirror and started liking what you were seeing.
Sure.
And you said, I like this guy. And once you like yourself,
sure,
that, like I say, I like to use the word vibrate. It vibrates all over, and everyone. Your kids feel better. Your wife feels better.
I'd say that's part of the story.
Right.
I'd say that's part of the story. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it wasn't so much a inferiority complex. Quite the contrary. I have an ego the size of the moon, but it was more about.
But you thought you could do this.
Yeah, it was more about just the way I was doing things, and I feel like now it's a lot simpler, more laid back, and honest.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, it's
Isn't that nice? And so you're in Dallas now, right?
Yeah, still in Dallas, and really liking it. The climate's good. Love the barbecue. Love going to the shooting range. It's a lot of fun.
You shoot. What do you shoot?
All kinds of stuff. Berettas and 1911s and shotguns. All kinds of stuff.
12 gauge? Or
12 gauge, pump action.
That's 12, Well, you can be, the 12, 16, 10.
Slugs, so they don't want you using buckshot at the range.
12, it's a 12, 16, 20, and 410.
We use slugs at the range because they don't let you use buckshot.
Okay.
But I've been using a pump action. I'm considering upgrading to a Benelli M4 so I can do my John Wick impression. But I love going shooting. I've tried to. So here I am talking about how I don't believe in assimilation. I've gone full Texan. I've been eating barbecue every day, and I started saying howdy. So it's a lot of fun.
But that's probably one of the first states that would try to secede from the United States. If
that's their own thing. I actually made the mistake of saying that Texas is in the South the other day, and a guy said, "No, Texas isn't part of the South. Texas is its own thing." And I was like, "Okay, excuse me, pardon me." It's very much clear. It's very much its own kind of culture. But I've been out in Dallas now about 2 years, and I really like it. I dig it.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Is that where Joe Rogan is? Is he in Dallas too?
Because
he went to Texas, but where's?
I haven't spoken to him for
Elon
a bit.
Musk.
So Musk is in Texas, So he's.
But where?
I think
Dallas?
I think Austin. I think
Is
he
Austin?
bought a whole big amount of land somewhere.
He did. He
yeah.
But
so
I think that Joe Rogan's not too far from where he
is.
It must be in Austin then.
So it's a popular state because of no state income tax. Right.
That's right.
It's great for business, similar to Florida. But I've had a great time out there, and I have no plans on leaving anytime soon. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's been great.
Anything else you'd like to cover before we wrap this up?
I hope to do this again. Honestly,
you will.
So I have. It's become sort of a tradition now to be here in the summers, and it seems like every time I come, there's some major new shift. Where we are now with the AI startup, I'll just if I can plug that for 1 second, last year we were just testing things out and doing kind of an alpha. Now we're in beta. We have support for all of the major LLMs, including Google's new Gemini stuff. We did a pretty large 6-figure angel round, and now we're trying to close out a seed round of investment. Had 3 investor meetings already here in Tokyo, and we have a lot of interesting things happening with that project. So I am really excited to see where we are a year from now. I'm hoping to have an even more exciting conversation.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. Love coming on.
I want to thank all of you for watching or listening to this podcast, and never forget, it's all on loan, so continue to reach for the stars.
Because you're too blessed to be stressed.